Hi, everyone. I'm Keith. I'm your GM, your Keeper of Secrets. And with me today are our wonderful players, Dr. Elliot Knight, Blake Emberlich, Vince, Professor Gregor, and Ivan. And we are about to start playing our game, Echoes of Elsewhere. So let's do a little recap of where we are right now, because we've played a little bit. We've had an opportunity to kind of test drive our characters and test drive our world. And let's talk about where our world is. We're going to be in the city of New Eden. New Eden is very much a modern day Gothic crossover of a city. It is a little bit of everything to everybody. In here, in our initial encounter, when our team of investigators met each other, you were trapped in the Happy Trails truck stop. And it was there that you found an anomaly, a incident, if you will. A creature from Legends was wreaking havoc on the truck stop, something that you later determined to be a were-yeti. For some of you, this confirmed long-held beliefs of otherworldly events. For some of you, there's still a little bit of skepticism, rationale maybe going into what you encountered. What I'd like to do is I'd like to we're going to go around the table real quick and have each of you just really briefly just give me an idea, your character's name, a little bit about your backstory for your character, and what did you learn from your experience at the truck stop. It doesn't have to be super in-depth. We'll go back and touch on a lot of these things as we go forward, just to give us a feel for your character. I'm going to go left to right, top to bottom, based on the way I'm seeing everyone's name. I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but we'll find out in a second. So we're going to start out with Dr. Elliot Knight. So tell us a little about yourself.
Hey, so I'm playing Dr. Elliot Knight. He is a medical technologist who has invented the world's most advanced artificial intelligence, Diana. With the truck stop adventure, probably the thing that most stays with Elliot is that there are things that are beyond our current understanding, and it is our job to try and understand them.
And Blake, what about you? You're going to go next.
I'm playing Blake Emberlich. She is 27, social worker at a local community center in Havens, New Eden. She was an emancipated minor at 16 and kind of grew up poor on the streets in the alternative punk scene. Her experience at the Happy Trails truck stop has taught her that there are weird things out there in the world, and sometimes we shouldn't think too hard about them.
And Vince?
Hi there. I'm playing Vince Pascal. Vince is a struggling artist living in a artist co-op in a neighborhood in New Eden, which is basically just a bunch of 20-something guys who haven't sold a single painting. His paintings are dark and weird, and they've gotten darker and weirder since the events at the diner. He's inspired by the Surrealists and by his experience studying at Miskatonic University in Arkham, Massachusetts, where he studied the art of a Mr. Pickman. And yeah, he knows there's some weird stuff out there. The were-yeti confirmed it, but he's trying not to think too much about it, but it keeps showing up in his art. So, it's kind of a whole thing. And he's just trying to figure out where he stands with all of that.
Professor Gregor, you're next.
Yeah. I'm playing Professor Gregor. It was from the truck stop incident. He had Professor Gregor, is a professor at New Eden University. He teaches history of science and maybe some intro to science courses. He's very into curios and strange things even before the incident at the truck stop as sort of an interesting hobby. But after his experience at the truck stop, he had a minor mental break, and his eyes have been opened to a strange, eldritch sort of truth. And he does not have the good sense to keep his mouth shut about it.
And Ivan, what about you?
Ivan is a lumbering Russian mechanic with a lustrous red beard, what can I say, and beautiful hair. Since the incident at the truck stop, he's been mostly his stoic self, but he has been finding himself staring off into the distance quite often. Anything flame-like kind of pulls him like a moth, and he's not sure why. Besides that, he's always saved room for the unimaginable, but never really thought about it until now. And he's just sort of there for the people around him as we speak.
And as time has passed, the truck stop incident was almost 2 years ago. And as the time has passed since then, you have become more aware of things in the world that maybe shouldn't be there, things that seem out of place. For Vince, his art has taken a different tone. For Blake, a venue that you were going to perform at vanished. It wasn't there when you went to show up for it. You have seen and experienced different things. But as most people do, when we see something that's odd, that's out of place, we try to rationalize it. We try to make it normal. The sound of a baby crying outside at night is just a cat. The sound of laughter coming from your attic is just the wind blowing through something stored up there. We try to rationalize it. That became a little hard when you got an invitation from an organization known as Circulus Lucis, the Circle of Light. They invited you to a manor known as Rosewood and drew you into their circle, as they are charged with investigating, understanding, and maybe helping those afflicted by these strange phenomena. They reached out to each of you individually, but they brought you in together. There is an elderly man who seems to be in charge of the house that you're operating out of. He goes by the name of Mr. S. He is open and friendly, but at the same time secretive about things that he feels that you don't need to know. There is a concern that knowledge can taint your interpretation is about that is going to happen. So he has intentionally kept things back from you, but he's not made that a secret. He's provided you with portfolios of various events that have happened. We're going to go back in kind of reverse order now. And what I'm going to ask is why? We know how you got started, but why do you want to continue? What is drawing you forward to investigate, to possibly put yourself at risk? Because a man did die during the attack at the truck stop. Other people have been missing, have been institutionalized. You know there are risks associated with it. What makes that risk worthwhile for you? And Ivan, we'll start with you.
Okay. Ivan is more interested in survival. So Ivan did get handed a dossier like everybody else, and in that dossier, something was confirmed for him. What was confirmed for him is the thing in the flames, the eye in the flames, the thing that keeps mesmerizing him occasionally and making him unaware of his surroundings, is something that may have happened to someone else, and that someone else did not survive. And so for him, it's pure survival. And he doesn't have super strong ties to everybody in the group yet, but he likes them all, and he's a good guy. So he would like to make sure that he upholds his personal responsibility to keep those safe. He's been a big lumbering guy his whole life, so he's always sort of been that person who's around for those smaller than him. And I would say that's probably brought him in. Do you want me to go into what he saw in a minute or less, or do you want me to save that for another time?
I think if you have something you can share in a minute or less, that would be fantastic. If it's going to be like 10 minutes, maybe we could wait.
Perfect. And that's why I asked. In a minute or less, Ivan read about a person who was a pillar of his family, a very stand-up, quiet person who worked hard for his money and didn't have a glamorous job, but was very there for a very beautiful nuclear family, something that he doesn't quite have. And that person kept saying the eye in the flame, and they kept finding him on rooftops, just sort of standing. And then one day, an eyewitness saw him step off a 12-story building. He floated in the air for just a second and then got yanked into the sky at a lightning speed, almost so fast that the noise that he made was half scream and half what a creature would make when they're being pulled too fast for their body to handle, and then he disappeared. And that frightens him.
Professor Gregor, what about you?
I think Professor Gregor is chasing the kind of truth that drove him to the edge of madness last time. He's got this sort of, hungry curiosity, sort of like a dog chasing a truck. He's not totally sure what he's going to do with it when he gets it, but he's had a taste of this, truth that scratches behind your eyes, and he wants to find more of it. And he sees sort of in the I had specifics, but just to keep it vague for now, he found clues to where he could find potentially a source, that he wants to understand what's going on, basically.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. I love the quest for knowledge.
Yeah.
Vince.
So Vince is motivated by a couple of factors. After the events at the truck stop, it is true that his art has gotten weirder, but it's gotten weirder in a very specific way. He has been finding paintings that he doesn't remember painting that contain doors. And sometimes he will look at those doors and they will be open. And sometimes they will be closed. And if he looks closely at those doors, sometimes he sees eyes there, maybe in the darkness. And he doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know if he's painted them. He doesn't know if something's painted through him. And if something's painting through him, he wants to harness that. He wants to use it. He doesn't know what it means. He doesn't know what anything is right now. But this company, this organization that called them to it, he sort of sees it as, his letter saying that he's the chosen one, right? And, he's seen enough movies where somebody gets a call to action, and he's always wanted that, but he didn't think it would be this. So, he's hesitant. The other thing that motivates him is money. He needs money. He's broke as hell. And if this organization's going to pay him, then, he'll do a lot of what they want him to do, because he's sick of his job. He works at this hoity-toity bougie farm-to-table hipster restaurant called Chum, and he would like to stop doing that. So if he can stop doing that and do this instead, he's a happy camper. So those are his two motivations.
And we'll go to Blake next.
Blake, in her dossier from the Circle of Light, was given information that people are going missing in her community. And these people were often the ones on the fringes of society, the ones that maybe the police or what have you wouldn't care too much to really look into. So Blake feels a strong obligation to be the person that looks out for those people and figures out what's happening to these missing people. She's also been entranced by these reports of nondescript liminal spaces that people are disappearing into, reemerging a week later, thirsty and hungry. But that's not the whole picture for her. She also received information that she is more or less already tangled up in this paranormal things that are happening in New Eden, possibly since she was a teen and lost her mother. She feels like she's already in it, and perhaps she can do a little bit of good sticking with these other people who she survived a near-death experience with. But she's still a little afraid of the answers that she might find.
And then wrapping up with Dr. Elliot Knight.
Yeah, so I think that Elliot has read through a lot of these same stories and seen things that spark his mildly egotistical view on the world, in which he feels that he should do everything within his power, using all of his resources to try to save the world. Everything he has done has been for, in his mind, the betterment of mankind, and he wants to help. And as you mentioned earlier, somebody died last time this group was together, and seeing these stories of more death and suffering, he feels this kind of self-important, self-centered draw to be a hero. And so he's going to use all the resources he has at his disposal to be a superhero.
And you have now been with the Circulus Lucis for a little over a year since they first recruited you. And during that time, you have made a place for yourself at Rosewood Manor, whether that is a private room, a library, a laboratory, an art studio, whatever it's going to be, but you've claimed a section of Rosewood for yourself. And during that time, you've had more paperwork tossed your direction than you probably ever thought you were ever going to see. Someone like Ivan, who is more a person of action, you found yourself just waiting and waiting and waiting. For Professor Gregor, you had access to some libraries and materials that you haven't had before. I don't think you ever saw yourself as waiting. You probably saw yourself as exploring just a different realm. So tell me what it was like for you over the last year and a half as you acclimated to being associated with the Circle of Light, but not actively doing anything. Maybe the boredom setting in. Maybe you're getting a little antsy. Maybe you're digging into areas you shouldn't. What's been occupying your time for the last year and a half? And I'm going to jump around randomly this time because I don't know what order to go in anymore. So I think for this one, I'm going to start with Vince.
So Vince immediately sets himself up in an art studio and a small bed in a room in the manor, and just is spending his time painting frantically and drinking to excess. And at some point, I imagine there's probably a scene where either one of you or somebody from the organization sits him down and has kind of a come to Jesus moment about the drinking, because he is out of control and it's becoming obvious. And at some point, probably 6 months to a year into all of this, Vince makes the choice and quits drinking. And something happens to his art at that moment where, as the fog clears from his mind, he starts to be able to see what he's doing a little more clearly. And he sort of starts to understand his role in all of this, or at least what he thinks it is. And his sort of brain starts to calm down and he starts to get a little more of a sense of himself and his role in everything. And he still doesn't understand really the crux of it all, but he knows that it's important for him to have a clear head as he goes into it.
And Professor Gregor, we'll go to you next.
Yeah. I think Professor Gregor is having a really good time. And well, a good time in the sense that, like, this is his element. He's been given access to a great many arcane tomes to decipher and correlate the information in between. He'd be happy if there were no missions. I think he's like just sort of got a room. He's fine living where he currently lives, so the room that he is given is likely set up as this large sort of workshop. There's a wall that's just like a murder board with arcane like writings and runes and odd sort of bizarre symbols covering it. And he's taking sort of the most strange tomes from the library and has got them open with books and books of notes. But I guess not a good time, not necessarily for his sanity. He's likely not, his connection to reality is likely slightly strained from the depths to which he's willing to go. But like, yeah.
I'm going to jump to Ivan now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was awesome. Ivan is frustrated. I don't know how big of a room he would get, but he would take a big room because he's used to sleeping in a loft or in his workshop. And he does try to tackle the paperwork at first. It's disgusting. And he decides to put a furnace, an iron melting furnace in this little workshop. And he starts building out a little workshop inside. It might bother some people. There's extreme heat if you're right next door to him, and soot and that kind of thing. And, he builds it properly, so he's not going to burn the house down or whatever, or the manor. But I imagine maybe Gregor walks by once or twice and sees at first in early stages, Ivan is trying to read the paperwork. And then you walk by like 3 or 4 days later and you realize it's everywhere and he's stuffing it into the furnace and using it to burn things. And you walk by the last time and he unwraps one of the pieces of paper gingerly and you think, oh, maybe he's actually treating it right. But he takes out a beet and you see him smiling, all red, looks like he's bloodied. And I got props, baby.
Just had a beat on deck.
Yeah.
And he finishes it up, and it's all mushy and in his beard, and then he wipes his hand on the paperwork and throws it down, and it looks like something super like critical that you hadn't read. We didn't all get the same paperwork, and he's just wasting it. So maybe he sees a look on your face, and he hands it to you and goes, do you want this?
Yes.
Okay. 1 second. And before you
Takes
grab
the
it,
beet stained.
he licks the last bit of beet juice off, ruins some of the writing, hands it over to you happily, big smile, teeth all askew in every direction. And then when you give him time, he'll go back to work. And now he's happy that he has a place to hand off this paperwork.
Dr. Knight.
Yeah, so Elliot sets up a lab, and for anyone who knows anything about technology, it's a pretty medium setup. It's not like extremely advanced, and he does a lot of working there. He's analyzing paperwork. He's kind of it looks like he's intently studying things and trying to understand things and research things. But when he goes home, he's actually just been looking for things to be able to research on his own. And he goes back to his secure lab at the house. And that's where him and Diana start looking into these events and trying to get more information. He thinks that this organization is probably good enough, but he likes to do his own levels of looking into things. I hesitate to say his own research because that has a completely different connotation. But he does like to look into things himself and keeps some information close to the chest. He wants to kind of verify the facts that they're being delivered in these dossiers match the real world stories that are out there. But yeah, he keeps that on the down low, and he makes sure that he's running through like multiple VPNs so it can't ever be traced back to him or his house.
So, Blake, we're going to go to you next.
Cool. So Blake takes up a space in the attic. One of those old manors, just kind of like one of those rooms with the low hanging ceilings and all that. She likes those sort of spaces. She takes up residence there. I think the impression from everyone else is she really doing anything? Most of the time, she's just seemingly trying to get to know the group. She's always coming into your spaces, wanting to talk, etc. She spends a lot of time away from the manor, just in the streets, talking to people who she knows. She has a lot of connections with people in her community. Something really strange and that annoys her is once a week, there is an individual from the Circle of Light who pulls her into this dedicated room in the manor, sits her down in a chair, and from what she can tell, performs pointless experiments with her. They will try to have her guess what object is in a box that she can't see. They'll try to have her touch various objects and tell them and give them some history about that. They try to have her guess numbers that the other person's thinking. It never goes anywhere. She thinks that they're just messing with her. And I think because of that, and because there hasn't been any action, Blake spends whatever time that she has free not doing paperwork or working her job, she spends that time trying to find all the hidden nooks and crannies, the secret passages that she is sure exist in this manor. She starts spending time investigating this Circle of Light that has recruited them.
You had mentioned various other staff members. For the most part, you've seen a few other people moving around through the manor, but not a lot. You've had two main contacts here. Mr. S. Mr. S seems to be involved in the intellectual pursuits of what's going on. If you are doing research, need paperwork, if he's trying to dig into your mind a little bit, I want to say Professor X, because in my mind, he's like an X-Man, Professor X type person, is going around and he's spending time with you. So your tests, Blake, were probably with Mr. Danny, on the other hand, when you first met him, you assumed he was like security. But he seems to be live-in staff here. He's here all the time. And sometimes he's working on one of the SUVs that are in the garage. Sometimes he's doing some electrical wiring. Sometimes he's looking over Ivan's shoulder, shaking his head sadly as he sees Ivan destroy a section of the wall to build something into it. And then he goes and takes care of the actual paperwork so that they don't get fined by the zoning commission if they ever come in here and look at the place. He seems to do all the odds and ends stuff. But someone does shopping, someone does cleaning, but you don't really see those people. They move in and out when you're not there. Blake was searching for secret passages, hidden walls, hidden chambers. They exist in Rosewood. She finds ways to get from like the dining room to the library to a study without ever being out on the main hall. And you realize that this estate is old enough that there are servant quarters throughout it that are designed so that the servants could move around unseen, which kind of jives with what you've kind of witnessed. You don't really see them. But then again, you haven't seen them in the halls either when you're moving through it. Overall, the manor is quiet. You're at the edge. You're on the far borders of New Eden. It's forest all around you. When you look out over the front drive, there's a roundabout that leads into it. You see a narrow road that goes out through the forest, and it vanishes before you see another building nearby. It's a normal day. You've fallen into your routine. Danny comes to your rooms, to your libraries, gives you a call if you're outside the building. And he has one simple message. Mr. S would like to meet with us. And I think that's where we're going to stop this section for right now. And we'll come back and pick up with what Mr. S wants to do with us.